following announcement has been paid for by the Celtic World Order.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome back to Celtic World Order for this wee morning edition, wee morning news show, if you will. And it's an absolute pleasure to have every single one of you join us. But more importantly for myself, from a very, selfish standpoint, it's great to have back on screen our very own Josh, who joins us back after many a summer holiday. Mate, it's great to have you back. And I must say, I hate using the phrase, it'll be like having a brand new signing. How you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. Thank you. A long summer, been in Germany, Tenerife, Mallorca, so good to be back talking about Celtic, and things seem to be ramping up now towards the end of the window.
Can't hide money. That many holidays. Let's get...
Yeah,
we're paying you too much. But that fee of nothing is clearly going some way down, son. So it's a pleasure to have you back. And as I say, it's a warm welcome to every single one of you as well who are sitting here joining us. Whether you are new to the channel, whether you're a returning subscriber, as always, we thank every single one of you for taking the time to join us. If you haven't done this, wee bit of housekeeping. Make sure you hit that subscribe. Every time we go live, every time we do an upload, you'll get notified and you'll never miss a beat. If you want to get us elsewhere, we're on X at CWPod1888. And if you want to help out the channel, you can by way of donation. Completely optional. Gets you no other additional content. As we always say, our content is the same as a Rangers transfer. Absolutely zero. But if you want to help us with the running, because this costs, then you can do that. And of course, you can be like the bold 420 somewhere. He is one of our many members. He is the OG, and it is a warm welcome to him and every single one of you. Josh, as we say, mate, let's get down to business. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of transfer noise. There's a lot of links. There's a lot of movement, potential incoming, outgoing. But before we do that, as I say, it's been a while, mate, and I've not had you on. So I just want a wee catch up with yourself and get a sort of overview. What have you thought of Celtic? How we've looked in terms of performances from the pre-season up to now? Has there been anything that's caught your eye? Anything that's really been impressed by?
I've been really impressed with the way Celtic are playing, to be honest, especially the first couple of games look pretty good. I think you can see a lot of tactical adaptations and natural progressions from last season. Under Brendan Rodgers, you can see he's had that pre-season to work with the players and really get his ideas across. It started the domestic season in brilliant fashion. Kilmarnock Flag Day was a really good victory, and then Hibs away was quite routine, and then Hibs at League Cup, some really nice football was played. So happy with the way the team are playing, but not so much transfer business. I think that's the same with a lot of people. We've released more kits this summer than new outfield players signed, so it is quite worrying. But the business that I've done has been pretty good. Kasper Schmeichel looks to be a really good signing. Obviously, you could argue he's probably an upgrade in Joe Hart. The way he plays with the ball at his feet is really, really good. It's good that they've also got a bit of long-term plan, and then they're bringing in young Vojami Sinisalo for about £1 million. It's a low-risk transfer. The thoughts will be that when Schmeichel eventually retires or moves on, Sinisalo takes the reins from him. And Paulo Bernardo and Adamida, I think everyone wanted them to sign permanently. I think both of us done a show the end of last season talking about just Bernardo and Ida, and it's good the deals got over the line, but the timing it took to get the deals over the line was a bit concerning. Waiting until mid-August to sign Adamida when arguably it could have been done earlier. Paulo Bernardo, I think the £3.5 million for him plus the selling fee's good. Adamida, people will debate over the £9.5 million, 8.5 million could rise to 9.5 million, but as a player who scored several crucial goals for Celtic last season, could you have gone out and got a better striker for £9.5 million? Probably you can, but is that striker already bedded into the team, knows how the manager works, knows his teammates, knows the club already, and wants to sign for Celtic and wants to play for Celtic and commit with a 5-year deal? So I'm happy with the business so far. I'm not happy with the business that's not been done, because I think there are several positions in that squad that need strengthened. Centre half screams out to me as one. So does left back. Probably looking at a midfield. Well, Brendan Rodgers comments saying he wants a midfielder even if O'Reilly doesn't go. So he probably wants two when O'Reilly does go. And then you're looking at attack. Probably looking at attacker, perhaps two, depending on Kyogo. And I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But yeah, it's been an interesting summer. Even like the whole just outside of Celtic, it's been a quiet one for a lot of clubs. Just look at Liverpool, for example. I don't even think they've signed anyone yet. They're closing on a goalkeeper, but that's about it. So it's not been any big, notable moves of superstars this summer. But I think you might see things ramp up over the next 9 days left of the window now. It shuts out.
Well, absolutely. You know, I share the sentiment, and what you're saying there is absolutely true. And you know, you've seen the times that I've been on here with Paddy, etc. It's always the same. It's an air of frustration as we find ourselves. You know, we're the 21st now. What will be the best bit of sort of 9-10 days into that transfer window, as you says yesterday, and I'm glad you brought that up, where the manager had been asked about the situation around about O'Reilly. Again, very coy. We don't need to sell. Every player's got a price, that kind of chat, and mentioned, they alluded to the fact that even if he were to stay, he was wanting to get in one other midfielder. So with the way we've seen things, it's sort of ramped up, hasn't it? At first, Atalanta, 4-5 bids, always falling short. Brighton, they started to come into the fore, and it seems, at least over the past sort of 24 hours, excuse me, that they have definitely ramped up. Now, we know they've got the financial muscle. They've actually come out. They had one of their representatives were on the radio, and they were asked about O'Reilly. They turned around and says, what's the effect of, I'm not going to speak about another team's player, all that general stuff that you get from these guys, non-committal. However, they were wanting to give the manager the best tools available to him to make a crack of it in the Premier League. Now, there's various sources that have come out on social media. One as well, very dependable, I'm sure someone that you know, very well respected as a very own Celtic man, is Mr. Tony Haggerty. He had released an article where he had essentially said that the information filtering through is that deal is all but done. O'Reilly looks keen to move down to Premier League, and it could be a period between anywhere 24 hours to 48 hours, with a fee being around about £25 million. Of course, there'll be incentive add-ons and mention of a 10% minimum sell-on clause. So as we said, we've talked about these guys. I was getting to the stage, I've always come on here and said I was consigned to the fact that I thought that O'Reilly was going to leave. I think deep down, our conversations on the chat, you've thought that as well. How did you feel with the competition for Atalanta? Now, we know that they are somewhat of a sort of, you know, riding the crest of a wave side at the moment. They've done really well in Italy, with the Europa League. Didn't win the Super Cup there, but they are in the Champions League again. They're throwing about the money. Multiple bids falling shy. Were you worried about them? And if not, how did you feel when Brighton came into the fold? What was your take on Brighton as a club, as a destination for them?
First of all, I think Atalanta would have been a good move. I'm surprised they didn't stump up the cash, but at the end of the day, if you want to sign the player, as Brendan Rodgers said, you need to pay for the player, not the league he's playing in. And Atalanta didn't do that. Brighton, rather controversially for some, I think it's a really good move for O'Reilly. They're a very well-run football club. From top to bottom, they have a really good structure in there. Everything Celtic should aspire to be as a football club, not as a business. Yep. So I think they'll do really well there. Watching their highlights for the game at Everton at the weekend where they won 3-0 at Goodison Park, and I think O'Reilly would fit right into that team. Some really talented players. Karu Mitoma, Jakob Minta out wide, Danny Welbeck's an experienced striker up front, and I've got a new young manager who's only 31 years of age, and I think we'll do really well there at Brighton. O'Reilly, and when he goes there, when he signs, they'll give him a progressive plan of how they view the next couple of years for him at Brighton and how they can eventually springboard him onto getting a move to a bigger club, such as a big team in the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A. We'll just have to wait and see, but I think it's a good move for O'Reilly. Could Celtic have got more than 25? Probably. And maybe it will rise to more than 25 with add-ons, and I'm hoping Celtic are usually wise with this. Will they put a nice big sell-on fee into the deal as well, perhaps 25-30%? That would be wise in my opinion, because O'Reilly's still 23 and he can still reach another level in my opinion. A lot of people criticising the move to Brighton forget that at least when Celtic are selling these kind of bigger players, and from a Celtic point of view, look at likes of Jeremy Frimpong, Virgil van Dijk, Victor Wanyama, Odsonne Edouard, Moussa Dembele, they've not really went straight to top clubs. They've always went to kind of Wanyama, Van Dijk went to Southampton, Jeremy Frimpong's at Leverkusen, obviously they're a top club now, but they probably weren't at the time. Moussa Dembele went to Lyon, who are not the biggest in terms of stature in terms of Europe. They have won a Champions League, but yeah, so I think it's a good move for O'Reilly, and I think he will succeed there. You've got to remember, Celtic signed this guy for $1 million, or 1.5 million, 2.5 million back 2.5 years ago, and he's everything that they want this player trading model to be. But I think O'Reilly was a lucky coincidence. Celtic found him.
Definitely.
It was
100%.
very lucky. In English League One, you're rarely going to pick out a player for that fee that is at that level. But it's a good move for him, and listen, I wish him all the best. He was on. He's a great guy. Spoke to him at press conferences and such, and he's so level-headed. He speaks so well, and I think it's no coincidence that he's now getting his big move to the Premier League, and that will probably springboard them even more into the Danish national team now.
Yeah, I listen, I agree with absolutely everything you've said there. That was the kind of sentiment I got. I think as we as Celtic fans, we're loyal. This is our team. We can't see past it. We'd walk across fire for Celtic, and imagine if you were playing for us, that you would never ever want to leave. But until you're in those shoes, it's a very short career as a professional, and you always want to develop yourself. Now, as you say about the character of Matt O'Reilly, I don't think anybody here would have any issues with Matt O'Reilly moving on. We see players leaving and fans turn on them if they want a rat and all that kind of stuff. One thing I would say, credit to the man, credit to the character, is he's always looked as if he's played with full commitment to the club. Every single game he's come on, as he says, but expecting maybe up to the next 48 hours, so not seeing him at the weekend. However, if that were to somehow kick down the line and he was still in that squad, I would still expect, no matter how much time he may be on that pitch, that you'll get 100% from him. And it would be nice to sort of give him a send-off proper if he was going to be leaving, I suppose. But yeah, the character of the guy, nobody can fault him, and nobody should be, holding anything against him, wanting to keep him forward his career. As you say, a lot of these guys that have left us haven't moved initially to big, massive clubs, but you touched on the footballing side of Brighton, and I totally agree, and that's something that I'd echoed. I feel that they're a very progressive club. They might be considered to be mid-level sort of Premier League, but if you compare that to the likes of your Southamptons and stuff like that, their levels of aspiration are far higher. The brand of football they're playing, the trajectory that they're on, as a footballing environment, as a culture, they're onto a good thing. And you look at the track record, even guys like McAllister and stuff getting sold onto massive sides, they are going to be a perfect fit for him. And particularly with the guys that they've got on the way out and the guys that have got coming in, they're going to have a very, very competitive side, very, very attractive. Now, are they going to break into the European spots? Remains to be seen. However, yeah, I think O'Reilly will do well down there. In terms of the fee, as you say, could we get higher? Quite possibly. But I suppose 25, maybe a wee bit more, because we're talking that it's going to be a record. Does that mean it's going to be a record once we do all the clip-ons, or is it going to be right at the front end? But for that kind of return, about £2 million for that, I know we're not a business, but you've got to look at it. The big question is, Josh, are we going to invest it? Now, that's the big one, as we say. We've talked about it time and time again. We're good at saving on to money, aren't we? And there's a few names that could fill the void, and we want to get on to them. I want to get your thoughts on them. I brought them up ever so briefly. The first one was this young chap here, which was Arne Engels, 20-year-old, be 21 soon, Belgian midfielder. He is currently at Auxerre. What's your thoughts on him? Not Auxerre, sorry, my bad. He is not. What's your thoughts on the young man here? He says he's currently at Augsburg. He's over in the Bundesliga. Belgian youth player.
Very much like him as an option. He's got a lot of experience in a top league for his age. Obviously still only 2021 soon, so I'd be encouraged if Arne Engels was the replacement for Matt O'Reilly. I think I've reading various reports are saying he's top of the list to replace Matt O'Reilly, which is encouraging. Can play mostly everywhere in midfield. It's also turned out right back a couple of times. Can play on the right hand side of the wing as well, so it would be a wise move. And this is what Celtic should be aiming for, in my opinion. You look at the fee that would be costing to bring in Arne Engels is, like, say, 7 to 9, maybe even 10. This is what Celtic should be aiming for. Selling these guys such as Matt O'Reilly and your big players for circa 25, 30, 35, and bringing in replacements that are in this ballpark of 8 to 10, so that you can then, once those players develop, say to selling clubs 2-3 years down the line that we brought this player in for £8 to £10 million. We have improved him. He is now at a much better level than £8 to £10 million. So we demand now £40 million. So that it's a constant progression of the transfer model, and that's what Celtic should be aiming for. And that's what they will be doing if they bring in Arne Engels. On the other hand, if they bring in someone like Luke McCowan or other names that have been mentioned as the directorial replacement, it shows no ambition or no sign of progression.
Yeah.
But Arne Engels, just him, I would be quite pleased if Celtic brought him in as their either replacement.
Well, that's the thing. In terms of that, just to touch on the basis for those joining us that may not have seen the wee video and the wee profile that I done on Arne Engels, who says, with 21 come September, he's a central midfielder player now. We always say trying to get in a direct replacement. Is he exactly the fit? Does he do absolutely everything that you were getting out of, Matt O'Reilly, or currently getting out of Matt O'Reilly? Well, the answer's no. No two players are the same, but in terms of his all-round game, he certainly is fitting that mould. In terms of being in the Bundesliga, he's certainly an up and rising star. I know that gets thrown about, but that is the press that are saying about him over there and sing his praises. 51 senior appearances. Last year, he had 33, 3 goals, 5 assists, so also chipping in. Previously at Bruges in their youth system, and he's had 100 career appearances in total, chipping in with 9 goals. His contract expires in June 2027, so there is a couple of years on him. And in terms of the legitimacy of the source, it was Ronan Murphy of Football Transfers. Again, if you put much credence on that, you can look at these guys' profiles. They have several large thousands of followers, so there's got to be something in it. In terms of his profile, ticking all the boxes, as you say, it comes back to, was it Reader? Remember, we were supposedly linked with him. A similar player, similar profile, similar price range. You touched on McCowan from Dundee. That's, I think, the underlying worry of all the fans, isn't it? That we will go for the blatantly obvious, it's right under your nose option. But Engels, it looks as if it would show a bit of ambition. The fee they're talking is always in euros, isn't it? So they're saying it's about 7 million euros or such, 7 to 9 million. So give or take, you're hovering around about that £6 million. But it does seem, and you know a lot about the youth scene, that this guy, if the trajectory that he's on continues, now's the time you've got to sign these guys. You've got to bite down a fee like that, have you not? And because a year's time, it could be too late.
100%. If he stays another year at Augsburg and improves slightly even on his season just going by, you're going to have some bigger teams in the Bundesliga looking at him. So I think identifying guys like him before they kind of reach that sort of wonder kid, high-end talent sort of status and bringing them in before that is wise, and that's what Celtic should do. With Arne Engels, he's been branded about several times, and I think it screams a Brendan Rodgers signing for me. But like you say, Fabian Rieder last season was one that was branded about a lot and eventually never happened because it weren't out of the price range, or Celtic didn't want to sign him. But you've got to remember now that O'Reilly's going, there is a need for someone in that position. There wasn't so much of a need for it last year when you were looking at Rieder. So that I would be encouraged if Celtic brought him in, like you say. It would scream a bit of ambition. And he is, well, he was almost going to the Euros with Belgium. I think he was in the provisional squad for the tournament. So that shows he's highly rated in his country as well. Coming out of Bruges, they've got a really good youth system there. Produced some good players in the past. And Belgium, they're always going to produce good footballers. And like I said earlier, it's good that he's got that experience in the Bundesliga. And the reports I've read, I think when the link initially came out last week, is that he doesn't mind, or he would prefer a move to Celtic down to the Champions League factor. Obviously got the 8 games, could rise to 10 if they get into the last 16 playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see how that one progresses. Arne Engels, if it does eventually come to fruition. Once O'Reilly goes, I assume you'll hear a lot more perhaps about Arne Engels.
Yeah, he's definitely one for the keeping the eye on, and that's the thing, is the manager, as he says, mentioned he wanted one if O'Reilly is. Now O'Reilly's still in the building, for those that are worrying there, nothing's came through, but it is looking increasingly likely, and there's no point of us kidding ourselves on, as there these things come round. He says if we're going to get this business done, if it's going to happen sooner rather than later, is the key point here. There's also been a few names we'll try and touch on. Most of the links have come through, and of course this is the other one here, another young player and this one is Alvin Sanchez. The fee for him would be around about the sort of £4 million mark. Again, the cynical Celtic fans would say, yep, that's right up our street. That's a lot cheaper. Again, young international, or at least at unders level, Swiss international, again, a central midfielder, slightly different from Arne Engels, offers a wee bit more. Currently part of the Swiss unders, set up with 14 caps there, playing at Lausanne Sport in their Super League. 113 career apps in total, 56 at a senior level, 22 goals, 7 assists. He's in contract until June 2026. And again, take it as you find it. Reports, comments are all very glowing of him over in Switzerland. And again, what's your thoughts on this as a proposition, Josh? Again, you always come to yourself when it comes to the youth teams because you follow the unders, you do a lot of work around international and Scotland stuff. Is this one, would this excite you? A bit of the same?
In a word, probably not, if I'm honest. But in saying that, Alvin Sanchez is a very similar profile to O'Reilly in terms of being like fit and physically. He's quite tall, he's left-footed, and he is a young player who's got youth international caps, like you say, playing out in the Swiss League, which is a decent division. He does look like the cheaper alternative to Arne Engels, but does that mean he's going to be much, much poorer than Arne Engels? Perhaps not, you never know. If you're offering me one out of the two, I would take Engels every day of the week. But
100%.
Alvin Sanchez doesn't seem like too bad an option. I think he would be a player who can come in, and he probably does need a lot of development. I would argue he probably needs a bit more development than someone like Engels, because Engels has been playing in a higher division and sort of Belgium and things like that. But just have to wait and see. It's not one I'm too excited about, Alvin Sanchez, but I wouldn't be gutted if Celtic ended up signing him. Put it this way, I'd rather Alvin Sanchez as the O'Reilly replacement rather than Luke McCown. But don't get me wrong, Luke McCown, see if you brought him in for £1 million as a squad player, 26 years of age, to come in and play domestic games and take some of the burden off guys like Callum McGregor and Rio Hatate, I wouldn't be against it, and I think Celtic should sign Luke McCown if he's coming in as a squad backup player. But if he's coming in to directly replace O'Reilly, then that is where my issue lies with that one. But I'd be all for signing McCown if he was a backup.
I mean, both these guys, McCown aside, he's a slightly older on profile, as we say. Celtic have always been good at having the best of the rest, if you want to call that, a wee bit of domestic stuff sprinkled around. And for me, I wouldn't be against McCown at, that 800k. That's absolute chump change. That shouldn't even be at the back of your mind. If you want him it would be squad filler. If you want him for domestic stuff, ticking off that, homegrown quote and all that, 800k, throw that around. And again, I say this, and it's no disrespect to the guy, I would rather have a McCown as one of my lower down the pecking order options than Kwon. Second year out in season and a 5-year contract. What is the point there? And sort of, at what point does that become a good signing or a waste of money? Who knows? Side note, in terms of you're saying about these young guys, Sanchez, Engels, age doesn't relatively mean that you're not going to be able to step up to it. But I just want to get your thoughts on it, because we've already got someone that you could argue £2.5 million we paid for him, and Thiago Home. So, where there might be some fans out there questioning how much better are these guys to someone that we've got in Home, who's been getting drip fed in with a couple of minutes here and there. Where does that leave his future?
Probably not at Celtic. I think you've got to trust the manager's judgment. Brendan Rodgers, I remember he commented this a couple of weeks ago in pre-season where he was talking about Bosun Lawal and Odin Holm, and he mentioned them in the same breath and line of conversation, where he based something along the lines of talent isn't just going to get you anywhere, you need to work hard, etc. And he mentioned Lawal and Holm in that comment, and look where Bosun Lawal is now. He's left for Stoke City. So I don't think the manager rates Odin Holm as highly as what perhaps some fans do. Listen, there's no doubt the boy has talent. And if you were to ask me, would I rather have someone like Arne Engels and then instead of Odin Holm? 100%. I think Odin Holm still needs a lot of development. Does have talent. He was in the Golden Boy nominee list when he joined Celtic. He's just an interesting one. A lot of people forget as well that he wasn't even a Brendan Rodgers signing. There was Odin Holm was more or less on the way to Celtic before Brendan Rodgers was on his way to return to Celtic. They both met in Mallorca before Rodgers and Holm were announced. So I think it's one that the recruitment team of that time had identified and looked to sign. And before Rodgers came in, they said, we've got this guy, you just have the final say, yes or no. And Rodgers is obviously just going to say yeah, because he's a young promising player. It's not one he went out and identified and looked to sign for Celtic, rather than what some Arne Engels would be. Perhaps a loan this season could be ideal for Odenholm, especially somewhere within Scotland, perhaps. For me, last year, he didn't really live up to the expectation. I thought he was came in and done a bit better than that, than what he did, but I still think that's talent. And maybe with a loan move this year, he's still only 21, 22 on a long-term deal. Perhaps somewhere within Scotland could be ideal for him.
Well, you touched on the likes of Boston Lal there, and obviously yourself covering that loan scene. Yeah. He came in, and as you said, the manager pretty much made his mind up really, really quickly. He was getting some game time. As I say, as I covered the pre-season, I thought he looked pretty decent against Ayr. You take that as you find it. It's against Ayr. Then it was up and down. He drifted in and out, and the manager had that conversation about him and Holm, where he basically says about you can have talent, but it doesn't make you a Celtic player. In the fullness of time there, were you surprised to see Boston Lal eventually leave Celtic? You know, where would you place him about the guys that we've kept around, if you want to use that as a term? Yeah. Particularly, I'm going to say Kwon, keeping him around as a guy that we paid actual money for. Did you think he was a better option to Kwon? Were you surprised to see him go? And what was your actual thoughts on the business side? I know we hate the business bit of Celtic, but what did you think of the business side of moving him on? Was it as a guy that's got your eye on the youth side, was it surprising for you?
A wee bit, yeah, to see him go, but not after Brendan Rodgers' comments on him. Impressed in the games, the pre-season games over here against Ayr United and Queen's Park, but then when the opposition level kind of stepped up, it didn't get a lot of minutes, and I think he came on one game and then he was actually subbed off after it as well. So that said a lot for me about what the manager thinks about him. To sell him for the money Celtic did, 2 million, could rise to 3 with add-ons, is really good business. Considering he's only made 2 senior appearances for the club. So yeah, from the business side of things, it's a good move. Because he was not in the manager's plans, and he only made 2 appearances for the Celtic first team in his career at the club. But a wee bit surprised to see him go. I thought, especially after his loan spell, that he could have come in and made an impact in the first team. But sometimes what you think is not what you get in football, and that certainly happened. The manager's judgment came through there, and Celtic get a nice bit of money for him, similar to like guys that say Haksabanovic moving on, getting a nice chunk of money. Benji Siegrist as well, so it's some pretty good business in that aspect.
That is, we'll be managing, as Jim's saying here, we're managing getting rid of some of the bloated squad guys and bring in the numbers. Now, another key point that's been brought in, just to come back full circle and talk about the finances. You know, if we're looking at potentially £25+ million coming in, it has been mentioned as well. You know, Celtic have, and it was Red Scotland that actually mentioned it. In terms of money, that's the amount of money that we've got sitting around there. I touched on this, that we came out of the 23-24 years period, if you will. We were about £19.8 million in profit alone on player trading model. We then sold, as you say, all those aforementioned players. There was 3.5 for O, there's the 2 for Wow, 2.5 for Haksabanovic, so on and so forth. So we're actually swirling around still about 30 odd million. Now, yeah, we've went and spent the best chunky, call it 13 million on 3 players, but that's still 17 million that's sitting here that we could be sitting, using, putting to purpose. If we look at the 2 players that we spoke about, it shouldn't be out of the realms of possibility. It shouldn't be out of the realms of expectation that if the manager says he needs 2 midfielders now, and those 2 guys are options or people of interest, whatever term you want to put on it, you know, you're talking, 11 million for those 2 guys. Keeps on talking about quality. I think you've got to go and do it at that stage. There should really be no excuse. I say it all the time on here. Ask Paddy, I'm going to ask you. At this sort of last 9-10 days, Josh, are you starting to get nervous, particularly when we look upon them, impending sort of departure, O'Reilly? Do you feel that there's a plan in place, or are you worrying it's going to be scrambling and we're going to get undersold once again? Because you spoke about it earlier on to me, the Champions League tickets are coming out. If there'll be fans give them that money nice and quick, is that just going to give them fuel to do nothing? How do we go about this to get players in?
Well, I think Celtic are already perhaps at the stage of scrambling in the window, talking about having concerns. I've had concerns the past month or so about Celtic's transfer business, how long it took to bring in a goalkeeper, how long it took to sign Adamida permanently, how long it took to sign Paulo Bernardo permanently. I think the way the transfer window has been handled this summer has been slightly embarrassing. It's just going to be an interesting 9 days. We know that there's, especially if Kyogo and Matt O'Reilly go, Celtic are going to need 4 or 5 quality players in the door. Now, do I have the confidence that that is going to happen in the next 9 days? I don't know. I don't think I do. I think we're going to have to slump for a couple of positions and leave a couple of positions that the manager wanted strengthened and that they're not going to get strengthened. That's just the way it is. And that's just the way it works. And it's annoying for a lot of fans. I can understand fans' frustration completely. And especially with the Champions League money, it's costing us circa £180 to £200 for the 4 games. And the fans are taking it seriously. But is the club taking the Champions League seriously in terms of investing in quality? I've said that a couple of times today that once Matt O'Reilly goes, the Celtic squad is going to be weaker than what it was
Yes.
at the end of last season. And arguably, you could say it already is because you've lost guys like Oh Hyun-gyu and etc. But yeah, it's frustrating. But you've also got the counter argument to all this, the lack of activity, that there's not been a lack of activity at a lot of clubs. It's been a quiet transfer window across Europe, and Celtic tend to do historically a lot of business late in the window. Look at Postecoglou's first season, where Jota, Cameron Carter-Vickers and Yorgos Giacomakis were all signed on deadline day. So there's nothing to rule out that could happen yet again. We'll just have to wait and see. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, new link with a new player today from Los Angeles, which is a really exciting link in my opinion. So maybe that can give fans a bit of encouragement going forward. It's just going to be very interesting, to say the least. And I'm not going to give a definitive verdict on Celtic's transfer window until 11:30 p.m. next Friday night.
Well, what I'll do is, before we get on to the aforementioned link that you say, there's one other one. A lot of fans are saying, as we well know, there is deficiencies. It's the back that looks as if that we also need to add quality. The key word is being quality. And another name that has came around, what I says to Paddy, what I discussed is, at the start of the window, as you'd imagine, you were getting linked to everybody. It then fell a wee bit quiet. Is there a wee bit to be taken away from the fact that more recently, usually, as I say, call me cynical, I've done the sort of video where I say usually we sell someone and then the floodgates open, and it looks as if perhaps that is going to be the case. Another name that had been mentioned was this very chap here, who is Owen Winjal. He is 24-year-old. He's a Dutch left back. People saying, hallelujah, praise the Lord, because that is an area that we have been shouting out for. There's no doubt that, as divisive as he may well be, Greg Taylor has proven himself over the years to be a very useful domestic option, particularly when he's playing more in that inverted style. But levelling up, and if we look back historically, your Kieran Tierney's, your Andreas Hinkels, Lustigs, we've always had good guys at the back that have been able to make a step up and really dollop in a wee bit of that overall European quality that you need when you're facing these top teams. Wee bit about him. Contract is up in 2027 June. He's currently at Ajax, though last season he was on loan at Antwerp, where he played 40 times last season for them. 289 career appearances in total. He's got Ajax, Antwerp, Alkmaar on his books. 11 Dutch senior caps, as well as a plethora of youth and right down to sort of boys level, if you will, in the Dutch setup. And yeah, he's one that we've been linked with, potentially a loan with an option to buy. However, you've got to look at the fact that, I say maybe even a loan, but the fact that they've loaned him out several times since he's been on the books at Ajax, he has played for them. It's fair to say that in the fullness of time, Josh, that Owen Winjal's not going to be a full-time Ajax player. So the fee would potentially be thereabouts £4.5 million. again, asking the question regarding quality, is that the kind of quality that we need? Is that what's going to level us up? And we look at Carter Vickers, we look at Johnson, slipping that in there, is that somewhere closer to the real deal for Celtic at the back?
I think it certainly is, yeah. Owen Wijndal rate him quite highly. Known his name for a couple of years now in terms of floating about Europe, playing for the Netherlands. Listen, I don't think Taylor is as bad as some people make out. Listen, he's been terrific the first 3 games this season. But like you say, to level up and have a progression in the squad and more depth, I think you definitely need another option at left back, and I think Owen Wijndal would be perfect. Like you say, he's got a really good CV. Consistent last season for Antwerp, and that's in the Belgian league, so could hopefully take that form into the Scottish Premiership and the Champions League. And I think left back has to be a matter of urgency. If Greg Taylor gets injured, you're either playing Matthew Anderson from the youth team or playing Liam Scales at left back. It's not great, is it? So left back has to be a matter of urgency, and signing someone like Owen Wijndal, whether it be permanent basis loan, it would add an instant of quality to that area of the squad, and it's one I'd like to see get done. Not heard anything since I think the initial link came out last Friday. Not heard anything since. Something in the coming days, you don't know. And he has a good age as well. So he's 24 years old, so it's not as if he's coming in as someone like, I don't know, perhaps Alvin Sanchez, Arne Engels, who you are taking a bit of a gamble on. You're bringing this guy in from a good club in Ajax, so you know he's going to be quality. And I think he's watching some highlights of him. He looks good going forward, and defensively as well. Looks quite adept. So I'll be pleased with that one if they got it over the line. But it's just going to be yet another wait and see, because we've not really heard much. £4.5 million, like you say, mentioned, would be a really good fee for someone like him. And I think for me, it's kind of similar to Nicholas Kuhn in the sense that played for some big clubs. Obviously, Kuhn been at some big clubs when he was younger. Wijndal at Ajax, and went out to somewhere like Belgium. Kuhn was in Austria, and Wijndal has youth caps for the Netherlands. Could have youth caps for the Netherlands, and a name that a lot of people know within European football circles that is not perhaps lived up to the potential, and they come to Celtic and they look to rediscover that, and that's what Wijndal could do, and that's what Kuhn seems to be doing so far this season. So similar to that in that sense, and I would be very encouraged if Celtic were to get Owen Wijndal on the door.
Yeah, I think in terms of, as we say, that word quality keeps getting bandied about, but he does tick all those boxes. 24, he's a right good age. There's plenty of prime years ahead of him. Even though he's been out on loan, he says at Ajax, Alkmaar, Antwerp, he's been playing and he's got Champions League and Europa League experience under him, playing at these sides. So that is obviously pivotal as well. The fact, I think, as well, in terms of looking at, is this one that could be likely to happen? Well, the fact is that he's not been sent back out on loan. He's back at Ajax and he's sort of sitting in at the moment. Similar to as you says about down south and looking at teams and squads being finalised, he might be a guy that's on the periphery, but still for them, they'll be looking at and thinking he's a very sellable asset. So again, I think this is a guy that you've really got to try and get in. Getting on loan's only a short stop. You've got to get them in. If it's going to be a loan, you want to kick it down the can, call it being tight, call it smart business, whatever. You've got to get them in with that option to buy. And for me, I think that would just fill me up with, confidence that it's going some way to giving you a more solid looking backline. Seen the comments, Scales' name's coming about again. Yep, I can flog that dead horse. He has been very good. He still doesn't come without his faults. He's been getting exposed a few times. That's a worry leveling up into the Champions League. I just want to touch, because you mentioned as well the likes of Lager Bielka. Looks as if he's probably going to be getting back out on loan. We were hoping he would maybe go out on a permanent sale. And also Notoriously, word is that he's also going to be available to a suitor, if you will. In terms of those two, has that just been an overall failed experiment? And aside from getting in someone who's left-hand sided as the left back predominantly, should we really be looking at someone as well in that sort of central role as well? Because if you take into account, we're not really bored with these two guys, at least you are usually quite injury-prone Welsh.
Yeah, I think left-sided centre-back has to be a priority. I think even if only one of Lager Bielka or Navrosky goes, I'd hope Celtic would bring someone in. Even Liam Scales, I think he can cope somewhat domestically, but when it gets to the European and the Champions League stage, I think Celtic need to upgrade on him massively. people who say he's good in the ball. I think he's very limited in his passing at times. When he gets past the halfway line, he seems to panic at times. He's someone who undoubtedly done the job for Celtic last season and stepped up when he was needed. But I think he can get a massive upgrade on scales. Lagerbielke and Nawrocki, yeah, exactly. Failed experiments. When Celtic sold Carl Starfelt to Celta Vigo last summer, the agent of Carl Starfelt, the agency, recommended Gustav Lagerbielke as a player for Celtic to sign and replace him. So he's not actually been scouted by Celtic. Someone came in as an agent recommendation, and he's not done well. The manager doesn't rate him, and Heerenveen and KV Mechelen, Heerenveen from the Eredivisie, Mechelen from Belgium are the two teams that seem to be interested in Heerenveen leading the race. That were the reports yesterday morning. So I think he'll eventually go. Lagerbielke definitely. Not sure about Nawrocki. Celtic knocked back a low ball bid from Legia Warsaw last week, I read. I think it was in the 1.5 million ballpark. He is injury prone as well. But like you said, cannot afford to rely on an injury prone Stephen Welsh as your backup. Need to sign someone else. That has to be a priority. So along with centre back, you're looking at left back as well, midfielder, two midfielders, a forward. It's going to be busy these next couple of days.
Well, I'll bring up this here because we mentioned sort of about the injury proneness, and Brian Warrior throws that out at us. Do we think they can be redeveloped? I think personally, for myself, Brown, you're kind of damned if you have any sort of negative to speak about one of our players. It doesn't mean that I dislike the guy. It doesn't mean I don't respect what he's done at the club. And, he's 100%, he's one of us, he's a fan. But what I would say is I don't think he can be redeveloped. I think he's now pretty much all the player that he's going to be. If you look at the amount of time that he's been at Celtic, yeah, he's been in and out the sides, but we'd be kidding ourselves on if we would say that he didn't get an actual proper crack at the whip, particularly when you look at under sort of Lennon. He was featuring a wee bit more and things like that as well. I think that he's, as I say, he's pretty much all the man that he's going to be. Is it just bad luck? Is it just one of those ones? For being such a sort of decent sized guy in stature, he's not particularly the most built guy. Not that goes for a lot, but is there perhaps things that he could be doing to work on his conditioning, his overall strength, that would maybe help him, that would maybe alleviate the potential of taking these easier knocks? Remains to be seen. But for me, yeah, I see all those attributes. Yeah, he is good in the tackle. He's comfortable in possession. Sometimes he comes on. We saw previously when he came on and as a substitution in the Champions League games, and he looked very, very comfortable. But the problem with him is that constant, consistency, and it's a word that gets thrown out there. And you've always got to say you can only be consistent by getting runs, games in the team. But for me, when you are somewhere around the sort of periphery, the squad, every single minute you get on the pitch, you've got to show your all and you've got to be consistent. Now, you could say that some of those chances have been derailed by the injury. Yeah, unfortunate. But as I've said with guys like Mikey Johnson, sometimes you've just got to cut the cord. You've just got to say, you've been here long enough. You've not quite been able to cement yourself as number 2, let alone number 1. We're just keeping you around for the sake of it. And I think he would probably go on to another club and it would be one of these ones he would make a decent career for himself. I just don't think that he's to be depended on. I think he would be getting kept around simply for that homegrown quota and the fact that it costs nothing. I think there is potential in there, but I don't, unfortunately, Brown, think they can be completely redeveloped, as it were. Any difference of thought on that for yourself, Josh?
Not really. Stranger things have happened. For me, just on Welsh, she's worked under 3 Celtic managers now. Neil Lennon, Ange Postecoglou and Brendan Rodgers. If Stephen Welsh was going to be a first choice option for Celtic, I think in any position, it would have been discovered, and he would be by now. He's 24 years of age, turns 25 in January. That's only 4 months away. So he's no longer a young player. Should he be kept around, like you say, for that homegrown quota for Europe? Definitely. And can he cope in games against such a Motherwell at home, St Mirren away? Yes, he can. Can he be relied on in the Champions League? Probably not. He's a good squad player to have around as a 4th choice centre back, because he's proven he can be a depth in the league. But I don't think it could be totally redeveloped. Listen, stranger things have happened. We've seen the redevelopment of Tony Ralston over the past couple of years. Like you say, James Forrest there certainly was only 24, and then he came on to a game after that. But I just think Welsh, I don't know. I think for me, if Stephen Welsh is going to be a key player for Celtic, you'd at least see some of that potential by now. He's a steady performer. He's never someone who goes into a game and has a real 9 out of 10 performance and shows a lot of his potential. He's someone who's just a steady contributor, and that should be kept around as a squad player for me.
Just to finalise on that, I think in terms of, I agree. The one thing about Welsh is, people can argue, there we go, Welsh and Bain are trying to beat Ballymelly's time at the club. Well, I think the Bainiac is just happy to be alive, as I've said a million times. I think, I don't know what it is, he must be some done in that dressing room to have him out. But in terms of Welsh, at least you can say that, albeit sparingly, he is contributing and he's got something to offer. What I would say is, I'm not completely against him being at the club. As I say, he seems content, he seems happy, he seems to know his place on the totem pole, if you will, of where he is in the squad. For me, I think, similar to, again, I know I sort of talk him down at times, but one thing I can say about Mikey Johnson is at least he's been out in periods of loan and he's tried to develop himself. For me, that might be the option for Welsh. If he really wants to try and make a fist of being a major player at Celtic, he maybe wants to be looking at getting himself out on loan to a certain club. Maybe that's in the Premier League, maybe that's elsewhere. Expand his horizons a wee bit, try and get some game time, go to a club who have got full intentions of bringing him in with the view of him playing for them. So he might get that run of, games that he's clearly not going to get at Celtic. Would be a good fit. I think maybe an Aberdeen, even a Hibs could be a great fit for somebody like Welsh. Should come into a side like that as a senior man, plenty of experience, and it might help build his leadership abilities as well as game time. So, I think that might not actually be the worst option for him if he wants to stick about and grow. Of course, that leaves us with the headache. It's one off that homegrown quota for Europe. But at the same time, I don't think that could be a reason just to hold on to guys. You've got to look beyond that. You've got to look at development. You've got to look at the betterment of the player, the benefits of a potential loan to the club. So, yeah, in answer to yourself further on there, Brown, I think that could be an option if he's going to turn into something at Celtic. Get him out on loan, see what he's got to offer. Now, just to move on, you mentioned it briefly, and I'll let you take the reins on this one because I saw a few people in the comments there saying there has been further links coming out this morning, and there was a player that you had been having a wee little look into. Do you want to tell us about what the word is with this guy, what you think on him? Is there any developments? Is it one that fans could realistically think is going to happen, and should we be happy about it?
I think, it ticks all those boxes. Steve, the report this morning is from a Polish journalist, Tomasz Wlodarczyk. Now, this is the guy that broke the stories of Mike Nawrocki joining Celtic and Josip Juranovic joining Celtic, so he does have a good track record with Celtic transfers. And he writes this morning that Celtic are, to quote, seriously interested in a player called Matthias Bogus, who's 22 years of age, Polish, has a lot of caps for Poland under 21. He's not played for the senior team yet. He's expected to be picked for the Nations League games in September. Now, he plays his football for Los Angeles FC in the MLS, where he's done pretty well this season. He started out in Poland, he then moved to Leeds United, didn't really work out from there, had some injuries, and then he went to Ibiza for a few seasons, partying out in the Balearic Islands. And then in 2023, he moved to the USA, and he's found some consistency there. First season didn't really get going, but in 2024, he's played 32 times for LAFC across the MLS, the Open Cup and the Leagues Cup, where he's scored 16 goals and assisted 6. So
decent returns, yeah.
He makes 22 goal contributions in 32 games. 22 years of age, this guy's only going to get better, in my opinion. What strikes me about this deal is how versatile Matthias Bogus is. This season, he's played 16 games as a centre forward, 8 games as a right winger, 4 games as an attacking midfielder, and 2 games as a central midfielder. Now, depending on what site you use, Transfermarkt has him listed as an attacking midfielder. FotMob have him listed as a striker. So it'll be interesting to see whether he would be the O'Reilly replacement or a replacement for perhaps the outgoing Kyogo, that remains to be seen. Now, in the report that I mentioned earlier from the Polish journalist, it says that talks with the club and the individual player's contract are already underway, and that a price, it could be between 8 to 10 million euros, which I think would make about £6 million, £7 million there or thereabouts. So yeah, I think this is one fans can get excited about. If I was a betting man, I'm not. If I was a betting man, I would put money on him signing for Celtic before next Friday's transfer deadline. I think it's an interesting link. I watched a couple of clips of him just before we come on air, about 5 minutes of clips, and he's quite small. It's quite similar to Kyogo in that respect, and he's very good on the half turn in midfield. He can hit a mean free kick, which is something Celtic lack.
Something he's sorely lacking.
Yep, and he can hit a nice strike from range, but he's also good in the penalty box. So he's a very versatile player, and I'd be very excited if this one got over the line.
No, I think that's that. Hopefully, as you say, pun intended, he's not a bogus football player, because we've already had a con artist turn up at Celtic posing as a midfielder, so we've been stung a few times there, and hopefully that's one to keep an eye on. In terms of that profile, he's very, very versatile. Sometimes fans, I'll be honest, I'm with that way, where you hear that term, maybe utility player, and you kind of get worried. But certainly looking at the quick stat attack that you fired out there, he's got numbers to back that up, and that's as much as you can ask for from a player, particularly if they've a attacking persuasion. So yeah, I think that's good. You mentioned it, and let's get round to it, because yeah, it's one of those ones, isn't it? People are saying, if we lose O'Reilly, that's bad enough. If we were to lose Hatate as well, that's disastrous. If we were to lose Kyogo, my God. Oh, now the manager's touched on Kyogo. We've seen it a few times, and I think there's always been, again, similar to Hatate, there seems to be a general belief, Josh, that he likes them, he sees the quality in them, but they're not quite his cup of tea, if you will. He prefers a different type of player. He acknowledges that they are very, very useful, and he will continue to use them as something he's Arsenal until such a time as potentially a better option comes along. So the word is, again, take it with a pinch of salt. Man City are apparently interested in taking Kyogo down there as a replacement, as a backup, a glorified backup for their departed Argentinian striker, which was a bit of a weird one, because I thought he was a fantastic player and he's got a very good track record with him, but obviously he decided to move on to bigger things in terms of getting more game time. This one seems a bit a strange one, given maybe the age, or is that maybe why it's not a strange thing? He's at an age where it's probably going to be his last potential shout at a big move. The price tag, you've got to imagine, isn't going to be that high. But I say strange because the manager's alluded to the fact he's got this recurring shoulder injury. A team like Man City are willing to take a gamble on something like that. The manager said if he wants to get it rectified by way of operation, anywhere between 3 to 4 months out, which simply Celtic cannot afford to do. We need every option we've got, and he's done pretty well managing that injury throughout the course of his career and his time at Celtic, give or take a few periods on the sidelines. This one, Mr. Romano had his clause in about this and mentioned it. And usually when these guys mention it, there's something in it, because these guys are out to tender by these clubs. They're contacted to stir the pot, to put the word out there, to dip their toe in and see what the fan reaction is. What's your take on this one? And I'm also seeing folks saying if they are interested, it won't be a matter of time before perhaps Ange comes a calling as well. What's your thoughts on that? How much do you put on this in terms of, I believe it, I think it could happen? And what's your thoughts overall? Is this something that we should be worrying about? Do you think it's likely? And what kind of fee, more importantly, could we get if we were to let him go?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I think it's worth noting Kyogo changed agents a couple of weeks ago. Now, when you change agent, it's usually for one of two things, or two things in general. One of them being that you want a move. The other one being that you want more bonuses and a better contract from your club. Or just ramp up interest in you. So I think this interest has came about for one of two things. It is genuine, or it's Kyogo's new agent just feeding these guys information that is false. My money is on that the interest is genuine. I think it is genuine. Man City need a striker. Julian Alvarez departed. They would be back up to Erling Haaland. Now, at 29 years of age, like you said, this is going to be Kyogo's last chance at a big move. His contract is Celtic to 2027, 2028, I want to say. So could get a decent fee for him. I'll go into that in a minute. But yes, this is the last chance for a big move. If I was Kyogo, I would go to Man City and be back up to Erling Haaland. He's going to get much greater wages there. He's going to have the chance to win English Premier League Champions medals, FA Cup, English League Cup, Champions League winners medal perhaps. And that's a great opportunity for his career. Now, I would not begrudge Kyogo if he did go. It's just I worry about Celtic perhaps replacing him within the short space of time. I think there's a realistic proposition this could happen. But like you say, I wouldn't be too gutted as much as a lot of fans of Celtic did lose Kyogo. 29, we've seen the shoulder injury be mentioned several times. And I think if Kyogo did go, I think you could be looking at something, I think it's hard to say, but within the 15 to 20 million pound ballpark is what you could get for Kyogo, I think. Like I've seen a comment earlier that said with the shoulder injury you could get more, and that is definitely true. I think it's also worth noting that one of the Man City assistant coaches to Pep Guardiola, Juan Malilo, was Kyogo's manager at Vissel Kobe in Japan for 6 months. So that's worth noting as well. It's came as a bit of a shock to me and a lot of fans. The rumour came out last night and it was going about, and then it was confirmed this morning. Just going off what I was talking about Matthias Bogus a minute ago, going off what I've seen from him, he looks like he could be the Kyogo replacement for perhaps, and maybe that's why Celtic are moving so quickly to get this done, because they expect maybe Kyogo to complete that move. I've got to remember as well, it didn't set it alight last season. He played every single game for Celtic, 50 in all competitions, and scored 19 goals. I think personally for a striker at Celtic, you should be aiming for 25, 30 in a season.
Yeah, definitely.
In a full season. So a bit below par. And if Celtic can get between the 15 and 20 million ballpark for Kyogo Furuhashi at 29 years of age with the injury issues he has, I think it would be, from a business point of view, terrific. And if you're replacing him with a guy like Matthias Bogus, who's coming in, who's 22, who's doing well in the MLS, he's going to be playing for Poland soon, I think it'd be good business from a business point of view. And like you say, Brendan Rodgers, it's always been an interesting one with Rodgers and Kyogo. Just they get on, obviously, but it doesn't really suit that style down to a T, if you know what I mean. He's never really set it alight under Rodgers. I wouldn't be surprised to see this one happen. 15, that's perhaps true. The tactics for 6 months last season were the problem, not Kyogo. First 6 months was dire to watch at times. So slow. Back to Kyogo. Wouldn't be surprised to see this one happen, and it is perhaps a life-changing move for him to go to Man City. It's a massive club, and it's probably his last chance at a big move. So fair play to him if he does get this. It's a great move for him, and listen, we can't fault if he does go what he's given to Celtic over the past 3 years, 4 years. 3 years, sorry. He's been a terrific seventh in the football club.
Yeah.
Goals in cup finals, everything against Rangers. So it's a shame if he does go, but fair play to him for getting the move. And Man City, massive club. Working under Pep Guardiola, great move from him.
I think the fans have looking and seeing the comments here, and I'm sure everybody will share this sentiment. I suppose the big concern here is we talk about the potential amount of quality that we could be losing. Kyogo's huge. Yeah, could we have better? Of course we could, but it just seems at the moment, similarly the O'Reilly situation, for whatever reason, we've had this evolution between the tail end of last season through the pre-season into now, where we just seem to be, even Hatate, who will just gloss over real quick, just a quick word on you. Do you think anything in that do you think we're at risk of losing all three of these guys with Leicester in the mix for him?
No, 100%. I don't think Hatate will go. I think Hatate stays. it's unfathomable to lose O'Reilly and Hatate. Never mind O'Reilly, Hatate and Kyogo. I think O'Reilly stays. I read a report on Monday night that said he's focused. This was in the Daily Record, Scottish newspaper, who are perhaps more close to the source than what the journalist who reported the Leicester interest was, that Hatate wants to stay at Celtic and build up his fitness this year and have consistency this year because he didn't last season. So I think there's no risk of Hatate going. But listen, if Celtic got an exceptional bid that's too difficult to turn down, then they'll take it. But I don't think they get that. I think it's
that's the thing. As I say, just before I threw that out there, I suppose the biggest concern around us all as fans is we're looking at the evolution of the team, and we're seeing how these guys are really stepping up. We've seen, the levelling up, Hatate, O'Reilly just continuing to get better and better and better. And also, as we say, about, brought up the tactics were probably the problem why maybe Kyogo didn't score as many goals as he had. He wasn't getting that supply in. We're seeing the rebirth of guys like Kuhn, James Forrest. The play so far this season has really been playing to the strengths of Kyogo. Maeda threw a cat amongst the pigeons with his strikers' performance the other day. But again, it was all about, similar to Kyogo, finding those runs over the shoulder, in behind, playing to these guys' strengths. So you got to think, we're suddenly doing what we should have been doing. Yeah. We've got the mix. We've got the mix perfect to play all these guys, to work to their strengths, to get the most out of us as an attacking threat. And now we're going to take two of them away. You can understand the fears. Obviously, the boy Bogus looks as if he could certainly tick a few boxes there. We've spoke about Arne Engels, we've spoke about Sanchez, all these other options. But it's imperative, if we are going to do that, and I know I'm stating the bloody obvious here, you need to get these guys in. This is where this next week is going to be absolutely nerve-shredding. If we lose O'Reilly in the next sort of 2 days, and then further down the line, you end up losing Kyogo, the last thing we want to be doing is scrambling about. And with those tickets coming out, with the money that we've just spoke about, fans aren't going to accept a purchase of a purchase of one midfielder, a left back on loan, and a developmental striking option. It's just not going to cut the mustard, does it? No. We really need to be acting sooner rather than later.
Yeah, definitely. Next 9 days are going to be telling for me, depending on who goes, who comes in, if they're going to invest, if they're going to bring in quality, or if it's going to be English Premier League loans. I'm very looking forward to it, though. It's going to be busy, and it's going to be interesting. So hopefully Celtic can get the business done. Exciting names being linked, such as Arne Engels, the one today, Matthias Bogus. If Bogus is the Kyogo replacement and Engels is the O'Reilly replacement, and they come in within the next week, I'll be quite happy, because Celtic are making nice profits and investing it in some decent quality. Bogus at 8 to 10 million, Arne Engels at 8 to 10 million. So let's just see what happens. But it should be a busy 9 days.
Well, that's it. We're not one to really put our firm faith in the board. Yep. However, we've got to look at the manager. The manager's been shouting out for it, and his hit rate, Phillips aside, I suppose, has been pretty good on persons that he's identified and brought in. So you've got to hope that that's probably going to be the thing. Before we leave, listen, thank you to every single one of you. It's been just over an hour. I am acutely aware that some of the bigger boys are now on and some have scattered away. But if you've stayed here with Celtic World Order, then that is the absolute future, because Celtic World Order is the future of Celtic podcasting. And thank you for being around here. One I want to throw out at you, because in typical fashion, we're talking about spending money. We're talking about a board. We're talking about wanting to spend money. Well, today I got it in my inbox. I'm sure you did. There's another top to be sold. We saw it. It came out. It was a rumour. And we talk about the requirement for quality. Now, no disrespect to any of the guys in that, but what an underwhelming, uninspiring bunch to have selling your new shirt there. Maybe Hatate aside. Yeah. And it seems a wee bit apt that perhaps for a camouflage shirt that we're using a bunch of guys that are, bar Hatate, largely invisible in the Celtic first squad. So what's your thoughts on that shirt first and foremost before we go, Josh? And is this just another thing to wind us fans up? Give us your money before we spend none of it.
We'll see that 5-a-side team down the Power League later on. But I think it's the top itself. Controversially, I'm not a big fan, to be honest. I just don't really like it. I can't really seem to get it. I've not bought any tops this season. It's 70 quid a pop. I can't justify it, so I'm probably not going to get it. But yeah, Hatate aside and perhaps Awata aside, it's not a convincing 5-a-side team, is it?
No, that's the thing. It's another top, as you say. Celtic, please go out there and spend some money. You're coming looking for all our money every single day. Give us some spending, because listen, you're going to be handed the big fat wedge of the best part of 25 million probably in the next couple of days, maybe a wee bit more with Kyogo. Do the honourable thing. Get yourself out there, get those checkbooks out, dust off the cobwebs, free the bats from it, and get some players in the door. Give Brendan what he wants, because I'm sure we are all bored off the board. So anyway, listen, thanks to every single one of you for taking the time out your early morning into this early afternoon now to join us in Celtic World Order. Josh, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you back on here, mate. I've missed you. I've missed your chat. I've missed your analysis. And you will, of course, be back in due course, because you're back here unless you've got any more mystery holidays that I don't know about. A busy guy indeed.
No, I certainly don't. Thankfully, I'm not away until next February now. So, yeah, good to be back, and thanks for having us. It's been a good discussion.
No worries at all. Listen, as always, if you haven't done it before you leave, hit that subscribe, give us a wee thumbs up, share it out there, grow the community. Thanks to everybody for sticking with us to the end. There was good numbers there, around about 80 off you live, a couple of drop off near the end, but that's to be expected. You can't always stick about, and I know folk have got stuff to do and a busy day. So until the next time, as we say always here, take care of yourselves, and hail, hail. We'll see you again.